Hi, I'm Shane Bennett. I'm the Director of Project Management for the Menlo Group.
I'm Mark Soelberg. I'm a VP of Dental Sales here with Menlo Dental Transitions.
And I'm Mark Haslip. I handle the commercial real estate, Vice President of Commercial Real Estate. I handle all the commercial real estate in the East Valley.
I don't think it's any secret that dentistry as a whole has shown a great amount of resilience historically, right? And we've seen that to be the case here over the last, call it 12 to 18 months as well, given the fact that we've been in a rising interest rate environment, and regardless or despite that fact, we've still seen valuations on the practices, for better or worse, remain strong. There's a number of factors playing into that, not to go into all of them with great detail, but one of them being the fact that the supply relative to the demand for practices, meaning the number of sellers versus the number of buyers, is heavily weighted towards the buyer end, meaning there are more buyers that are generally looking for practices than are available. So that helps support the prices of the practices themselves. Dentistry has also historically been a very profitable business and profitable industry, and so the effects that we may see, for example, on the residential and commercial real estate side, as far as rates rising and valuations being softened an amount on that side, isn't playing into the same effect on the transition side, simply because there is still enough cash flow that's being, or enough net income or profit on the practices themselves that allows them to still maintain or cover the debt services despite those interest rate increases that we've been seeing. So as far as where I see that trending in the future, impossible to know for certain, obviously, but based off of historical patterns, I would expect that things continue to move the way they have been so far, that prices, as far as practice opportunities, perhaps they soften a little bit. Perhaps there are some value deals that may be more appealing now for certain types of buyers than what we've seen in the past. And as far as the current banking crisis, I think was the second part of that question. As far as the current banking crisis or the banking, conditions, however you want to explain it, it will be interesting to see how that continues to play out. Can't say for certain that the crisis is entirely behind us. I don't even want to term it a crisis, but from the perspective of and the settling of a good majority of regional banks, and it seems like and the responses from the Fed and elsewhere, it seems like those concerns have been pretty well mitigated.
So it's been really active. There's a lot of things right now that are playing into the real estate world. Financing market just kind of alluded to some of the different things that are going on with the lending institutions, recent bank failures, run on the banks, all those types of things, let alone when the Fed raised rates, I think 7 times last year alone, 1 time so far this year. They've said that they're not done. Every time the bank moves the cheese, if you will, it affects everything as a kind of a cascade for commercial real estate. That being said, if Arizona is a little bit of a bubble, we're a little bit of a bubble. And by that specifically, I mean, we've been growing like crazy for the last 50 years. We're going to continue to grow for the next 50, as long as we still have water, knock on vinyl, whatever this table is. But yeah, as long as we still have kind of the basics, we're going to still keep growing. And so that's kind of big picture. Specifically, historically we've seen a lot of dental that go into retail space. The commercial real estate world, we kind of call it medtail. Not really a great description, but we see a lot of dentists that are in an asset like that. And right now, we have historic low vacancies in retail. By historic, I mean 4 to 6% of all retail space is vacant. That is something that our market hasn't faced in 20, 30 years. And so because of that, it's just this ever narrowing and tightening world within space for either new practices that want to start up and find a space. It makes it difficult to find a space. And for those that are existing, it makes it challenging to renew because landlords have never been more leveraged than they are right now. Never. And the reality is they know it. They've got all the leverage, they've got all the cards, and they're playing it. So, there's definitely some things that we can do, but if we attempt to kind of look forward into the future, again, here's my asterisk, no one's got a crystal ball, but we have way more demand in Arizona than we have supply right now. And I believe that's going to continue for at least the next couple of years. And what that will do is it's going to force rent rates to go north, and it's going to also constrict the amount of concessions that landlords give to dental tenants. So in the past, we were able to squeeze out a little bit more concessions from landlords and free rent and tenant improvements, those types of things. These days, they quite honestly just don't need us as much as they have in the past. And my guess is that, it's cyclical, it'll come back at some point in the future, but right now where we sit, landlords are leveraged and they know it. So what's interesting is if you drive around any part of the valley, West Valley, East Valley, when you see a sign that says Target coming or, a new grocery store that's coming, those deals that house all the tenants next to, in line, adjacent to any of these big anchor places, all those deals were put together a year to 2 years ago. So when we look for new space, if we're looking for something that's good location, that's kind of on Main and Main, good signage, visibility, parking, all the things that we want in our industry, we're really looking for a good space that's going to be built and delivered sometime in the next 2 years. And that can present its own unique set of challenges when it comes to planning that far out. But yeah, big picture when it comes to real estate, if we hold, I believe that things are going to get more expensive over the next couple of years and not better, because we have such a backlog of people who want space and such low vacancy now that landlords are going to be protected, I believe, for the next 2-3 years to come.
There's no question we're in probably the most expensive construction market that we've ever seen. There's a reason why construction costs go up. One of those has to do with interest rates and things along those lines. That's not the issue that we have. We are still at some of the lowest interest rates in terms of borrowing that we've ever been. Our problem and the issues we're having right now are both still in supply chain, still in labor, and the costs of materials. Although that's gotten a little bit better, we have as Mark mentioned, we have a very active market, and so there is still a lot of building going on. Part of the problem that lends to us is that people are very busy. Contractors are very busy. Subcontractors are very busy. It's why it's very important that when you're looking for resources or looking to do a project, that the resource is important. A plumber, an electrician, someone in that subcategory that's very, very busy, they don't particularly need the work. They have plenty of work. And so there is a lot of areas out in the market where prices can be inflated, not because they should be or they have to be, but because they are. Whether that plumber does the job or not, he has another one lined up behind that. Having said that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do a project. Doesn't mean you can't do a project. One thing that to keep in mind isn't so much the ability to do the project, it's the amount of money that you can actually borrow hasn't changed a whole lot. And so we're trying to do higher priced projects in materials and labor costs for the same amount of money that we borrowed before. And so with that, it's extremely important not to just get a resource, but to get the right resources. There's no reason that you should pay more than you need to pay. You can see a particular bid on any given project, and the variance in that bid can be astronomical. You can have a tenant interior with 2,000 square feet, and those bids can be $200,000 apart. It's important there again to do your research. It's important to have a team that understands the costs, what costs should be, and then the resources by which to get there. Practices and building is taking a bit longer than it used to. Once again, supply chain. But a lot of that is leveling out. There are some areas that we still have some issues in. There are some areas that have leveled out. There are some areas that have started to come down. Is it ever going to get back to where it was? I don't believe so, at least not in the near future. But the truth is we're doing projects, and there are many different types of projects out there. It's about resources, it's about being smart with your money, and about understanding those budgets on the front end. And so with that, again, it's the resources, it's the people, it's the financing of all those things come into play, and you have a good team around you. There's still projects to be had and should be had.
Definitely one of the hotter topics over the last several years in dentistry, DSOs, or what are becoming increasingly more common, the DPO, or the dental partnership organization structure. As far as what to look for or what to be aware of, I think one of the biggest things that Mark and I were just talking about is know your options. Know, which can mean any number of things. Know your options as far as when you want to make an exit, and not just from selling the practice, but also from practicing dentistry, because those two things don't always correlate, particularly, or I guess more especially, when considering a DSO or DPO route. Know your options when it comes to, and as it relates to the timing, you want to make sure that you're working back into an appropriate timeline. A lot of groups like to see at least at a very bare minimum 3 to 5 year commitment, if not more. And so know what your options look like from a timeline perspective. Know your options as far as what groups are out there, right? There are hundreds and hundreds of groups that have capital waiting to throw at different practices in different areas and different market types and things like that. They're not all created equal. I think some of the important things to understand or be aware of or press for more information on are things such as, what are the current growth patterns of the group, what are the anticipated or projected growth patterns of the group, what type of clinical autonomy, or maybe even operational autonomy in some cases, what type of autonomy do they allow their partner doctors to maintain. I think another big one, and this could be an entirely separate category in and of itself, but what's the structure of the deals or the offer that a group's presenting. These groups are shrewd and quality negotiators. They've got teams dedicated to performing due diligence and evaluating practices and presenting offers, and so they've done this time and time again, and there can be some amount of complexity to offers or letters of intent or indications of interest when presented to buyers, and so it's important from a doctor seller's perspective to be able to know what you're looking at. Know what the structure of the offer entails for you, both in the immediate or short term, as well as in the long term. And so, best thing I can say there is get help, know your options, find somebody that can interpret how these offers compare and what's most favorable from a seller's perspective if you're looking at a longer term partnership or a shorter term partnership, and kind of what your top priorities are in an exit strategy if you're going to explore something with the DSO or DPO. But in short, it's, I think, pretty clear and has become increasingly evident over the last few years that it's not an area that's going to go away. I think that it's just more a matter of determining, number one, if it's the right fit for you, and then number two, knowing, kind of going back to the initial conversation, knowing what your options are, knowing how to evaluate that.
I'll add to that. Can I add to that? Okay, so when it comes to end of career type of transitions decisions, that is not a small undertaking, nor is it simplistic in any way, shape, or form. So, if we could boil it down to those two things, I think what Mark is saying is accurate, right? Know kind of your timeline, when you want to exit, and then know the options that are available to you on how you exit, right? We've all heard stories, colleagues, study clubs, everyone loves to, tell the one-off story of someone showed up with a trunk full of cash and, the seller then rode off into the sunset. And the reality is that's never really happened. And so the details of these things and how they're structured and what makes the most sense for you as an individual seller is incredibly important. You're talking about one of the most valuable assets, if not the most valuable asset, financially speaking, of your entire life. And something that's going to give you a massive leap, a platform, so to speak, to enter the retirement phase of your life. And so these are not small undertakings. And to boil it down to those, two factors, timing and know your options, one or either of those is going to influence the other one. And so just to have someone who can walk you through and guide you through the options can act as a true advocate and representative for you on your behalf to vet out what is going to make the most sense for you to give you the type of exit that you want and desire and need is vitally and crucially important. And we tend to see all different types of experiences in that area, for good or bad. And when these are, friends of yours, especially for those of us who've been in the industry for a long period of time, and you have conversations with folks who just didn't maximize their exit, and you find out after the fact that you feel bad because these people matter to us. And so to be able to have those conversations on the front end before you get too far down the line to make sure that, again, you've got someone negotiating and vetting out those options for you to the best of your interest, I think is incredibly and vitally important. Okay, so this will apply to the earlier question for sure, and that is we're living in a day and age where landlords have never been as leveraged as they are today. So these types of renewal conversations are more important than they've ever been. And if I could boil it down to one thing, I would say that the best leverage point you can have, if we have any today, is time. So we used to say, 6-ish to 12 months ahead of time before the end of your term is probably a good time to engage with a real estate professional who specializes in your type of real estate to start having those conversations on what you do and how you do it and when you do it, kind of build a strategy, so to speak, and helping you renew. But I don't think that's enough time anymore. I would say 12 to 18 months is going to be more important than ever to be able to build that strategy, if there's even one that can be built. If you have no desire to move, if there are no options in your submarket to move that make sense for you for a whole host of reasons, then it's better to know that sooner rather than later, so that we play whatever cards that we have, we play them in the correct way. So when landlords have 4 to 6% vacancy, and they know it, that's one of the only leverage points that we've got on our side, is to be able to have a perceived threat, so to speak, if I can use that term correctly, to present something that to a landlord that gives a little bit of doubt that you may vacate their space. But with that low vacancy rate, and depending on what you're currently paying, a landlord may actually want you to leave. So it's important to know if you have renewal options and what those renewal options say and how they're exercised, and to how to be able to, again, best use that to your advantage. But time is still on our side, and if we can, have those conversations early and often to prepare for this renewal in the best way, shape, or form that we can, that's going to be the best resource we've got.
If I can add to that, that's exactly right. I think, Mark, and you can probably tell me, a typical dentist will normally sign a longer lease, 7 years, 10 years, things of that nature. I think that's still valuable to an owner. The failure rate of dentistry is as low as it's ever been. It's at maybe 5% actually fail. And so the ability in today's climate for a tenant to be solid, Dentists are still known to be very, very solid in terms of tenants. And so because of those longer leases, because of how solid they are and the chance of failure being so low, that there's still, I think, some leverage there in terms of why an owner would want a dentist in their complex versus maybe some other type of company.
I would say, to add to that, I mean, historically speaking, dentistry as a whole has been some of the most attractive tenants that retail has ever had. But we're losing a little bit of that. We're not as attractive as we used to be, despite the fact that we have incredibly low default rates.
Yeah.
Incredibly low. I had a conversation less than a week ago with a broker that has a new retail space that's coming. There's a 2,400 square foot space available in a really, high trafficked area, great submarket. And their comment to me was, historically this would be the perfect space. Single level, good signage, visibility, parking. It's ideal for a dentist. The feedback that I got from the broker was, we are looking for national credit, and specifically here's what that means. If you don't have 5 locations and millions of dollars on a balance sheet, we're just simply not interested in talking to you anymore. And despite the fact that dentistry as an industry is incredibly healthy, we're talking DSO, DPO, we're talking the Mark Soelberg world, right? And that's, landlords right now can afford to be that greedy because there's such low vacancy and such high demand that they can really demand that. And historically, they haven't been able to do that, but in today's market, they can.
I would say that everything we've talked about today is the one thing to understand is that all kinds of plays into each other. And with anyone that's considering anything, I think you need to look at the resources in front of you and who is representing you. As it relates to everything, you have specifics that you're very good at as a dentist. There are things that you need and should bring other individuals in that specialize in those types of areas. Again, we work for you. I tell clients all the time, listen, when you're building a project, everybody's working on your project, but quite honestly, they're all working on their own project. Electricians working on the electrical, the plumbers working on the plumbing, and cabinet guys working on the cabinets. And so you would think that there's a lot of coordination and understanding into that, but quite honestly, there's not. I found over my career of 25 years and 380 plus dental offices that 85% of everything that happens on a job site that can cost and turn into a change order doesn't need to happen. It's because you start out bad and you end bad. And so there's not a proper expectation, an understanding, a plan in place that allows us to get to where we need to go. And if someone's not watching over that, then that's where the issues come in. Again, with every client, it's you can deal with what you know. It's what you don't know that hurts you. And at the end of a project, to get a $20,000 change order that quite honestly didn't need to happen, you're not prepared for that. And in today's market, you don't have the financing for that. And so as Mark talks about the leasing side of things, again, with the leverage all being on the owner side, your TI reimbursements are smaller. We can't go in and fight for those as much as we used to, which is all the more reason you have to really make sure that every dollar you have is being spent the way it should be spent and not overspent. And a lot of that can take place. Again, you just need the right team around you. You need people that understand the particular modality of what it is we're doing. And again, you need someone that works for you. No one's out to deliberately mislead or cause you to lose sleep at night. Unfortunately, it's just what happens. And so don't be afraid of doing the project. Don't be afraid that you can't do it. You absolutely can do it. You just need to build a team around you that focuses on you.
The recommendations that I would give for somebody that's looking to exit in the next 3 to 5 years really hasn't changed much than what it's looked like historically. I think really the biggest thing, and Mark Haslip talked about this when discussing lease negotiations and things like that. Really, time is in your favor. I can't stress enough the importance of if you're wanting to maximize, not just maximize the financial value of your exit, but also just the overall fulfillment and having an enjoyable experience. If those are the things you're trying to maximize, the best thing you can do is put together a plan sooner rather than later, right? 3-5 years out is never too soon to start. Once again, knowing what your options are, knowing what kind of strategy, exit strategy you're looking to employ, whether that's selling to a private buyer, whether that's selling to an associate, whether that's partnering with a DSO or DPO and working back for a period of time. Really, it's so situational, and not every scenario is going to work for every single different office, and seller. And so it's important to plan ahead, know what you want, and then get with somebody that can guide you through that process, let you know realistically what those options would look like. If we were to get into more of the specifics as far as what can I be doing today, if I want to prepare for a sale in the next 3 to 5 years, I think some of the primary ones that come to mind. If you have a financial advisor that you're working with, meet with them, make sure that you are on track with your retirement objectives, and that a 3 to 5 year timeline may be realistic. For some people, quite frankly, it's not, and they have to expand or extend, I guess, that work period that they were originally planning on, or sometimes it goes the other way and they can actually retire sooner or exit sooner than they were originally anticipating. So I would stress meeting with a financial advisor along those similar lines. Know what your practice is worth. Get it appraised by somebody that's familiar with dentistry, that has the valuation credentials to provide you with a business appraisal, so that whether that's to include in a trust or estate plan, whether that's to just have a frame of reference as you progress towards that sell or that exit, you'll have that ready to go. Some of the other things as well include trying to clean up your books, right? Nobody's going to come in and necessarily audit the tax returns that you've filed over the last several years. But one thing that we found to help is when it comes time to sell is maybe cut back on some of those more creative methods that we use to kind of limit that tax liability, so to speak. It just makes it a cleaner sell when it comes time, and makes valuing your practice and justifying and defending that value a whole lot easier the cleaner your books are. If we were to keep on going, number of other things. Obviously, you want to make sure that whenever you get that timeline in place as far as when you're wanting to exit, that you are essentially firing on all cylinders at the point of trying to exit or trying to sell. Similar to conversations with those that don't necessarily plan ahead or give themselves enough lead time, too often the most common mistake we see is sellers that have a love for dentistry and love owning and running their business, but then realize for any number of reasons that they've just had it, and whether that's physical limitations or just realizing that, hey, there's other things to do outside of just dentistry or running a business, and then all of a sudden they want to sell within the next few months, and there's very little that can affect or harm your value as much as not having enough lead time. So I would definitely say make sure that whatever exit strategy you're planning to implement, that you try and sell at the top of that curve, as opposed to when you're falling down the other side of that curve, so to speak. So
don't take your foot off the gas.
Don't take your foot off the gas.
Okay, for those that own their real estate, I would say good for you, and you've got options. So when it comes to an exit, Mark Soelberg and the transitions team will help with the valuation of the practice itself, But from a real estate standpoint, that becomes a second exit, so to speak. you get kind of a second bite of the apple, and if it's done correctly, then it can be a great thing. And in order to do that correctly, it just takes planning, just like it does with the practice transition. It would take planning to do with the real estate. So oftentimes the clients and the folks that I deal with have kind of positioned themselves, or at least the typical thought is, I'm going to get to retirement, I'm going to sell the practice, keep the building, and I'm going to become a landlord, and those rent payments that are going to come in every month are going to be awesome. And in certain circumstances, that makes a lot of sense, and it does, and it can be a retirement windfall. And in other set of circumstances, what people learn is that being a landlord sometimes isn't all it's cracked up to be. And in those moments, it might make more sense to exit both practice and real estate simultaneously, but there are better ways to do that than others. So without taking a deep dive into the specifics of that, get some good advice with someone who understands that market specifically and handles dental specific commercial real estate. Because those are two separate transactions, but if they're collaborated together in a correct manner, it can provide a maximum exit for both of those. In fact, a much higher lift together than either one of them could happen on their own. So that's for those folks who own their own real estate. For those that don't and are looking, my advice is, generally speaking, keep your eyes open. So if you can, if an opportunity comes for you to own your own real estate and it makes sense financially for you to do so, these are short and long-term discussions, but generally speaking, if you can keep your practice within a certain geographic boundary, you're not harming what you've built you worked so hard to build over the last several years of your career, and you can relocate this thing into something that's an asset that's appreciating instead of spending those rent or lease payments and enriching someone else, then my advice is, generally speaking, do it. But like anything, we just have to balance what that really means and if it makes financial sense to do so. What a lot of times people don't understand is there's tax advantages to both leasing and owning. And owning real estate isn't necessarily the best financial decision for all parties in all circumstances. So I would just say it's worth having a conversation, but generally speaking, yeah, it's a great opportunity if you can find the right asset for the right price. I would say one of the biggest advantages to working with the Menlo team is it's exactly that. It's a team approach, and there's multiple different resources and avenues in ways that we can help a medical professional, a dentist, in all stages of their career. So we talked about a few of them, in this video. We have transition services, we have project management services, we handle any type of real estate need that you have at any point of your career, whether it's opening a new practice, it's a renewal, it's an expansion, it's a sale, it's a purchase, it's a sale lease back, it's an investment sale, whatever it is and how real estate is going to impact your business, we handle those types of services. In addition to that, and something that really wasn't mentioned in today's video, is we do property management services as well. So for those docs that are looking at moving into that retirement phase and keeping the real estate asset and having whoever they sell the practice to lease back from them, it becomes a little bit more of a viable option if they know that they can have someone that handles those types of phone calls, the tax filings, the documents, and everything else that can make managing and owning that commercial asset quite a bit more user-friendly than it is to get those phone calls that we all dread as owners, on a Friday night saying that the water heater is broken and you've got a flood. So please stop your vacation and rush home immediately and help me out. There's nothing exciting or great about that. So that as a background, Menlo's here to support you in multiple different ways and capacities, and it's truly a team approach. And it takes a team approach, whether it's just a transition, because we look at it from a myriad of different angles and resources, that if it happens to be in that transition a lease transfer, if it happens to be that you own the real estate and you want to lease back to the incoming buyer, you want to sell the asset, it's super helpful to be able to have those resources and professionals that do those specific transactions and are good at them and professionally handle those on a daily basis to collaborate on the entire process, so that you benefit as a whole. I mean, with Shane and project management, nothing has become more vital to me in my conversations with those people who are looking to start a practice within the last couple of years than the conversation that I can now have for project management. Everyone always asks, well, what is that? And we kind of laugh and joke because I ask them if they watch HGTV, and everyone chuckles, and I'm like, yeah, Chip and Joanna Gaines have probably ruined more marriages than any other couple on TV. And we all laugh because we know instantly what that means. It means if you're a DIY, you know, if you're a DIY gal or guy, then you just think, especially if you've never done something like this, it's no big deal. I can just handle it. But everyone who's done a project before, I don't know a single person that would say, yeah, I don't need any help and I'm just going to handle this all on my own. We live in a different world today, and we have different set of circumstances that are drastically impactful. So to be able to have that resource that Shane brings to the table to help manage that entire project from start to finish is incredibly important because it keeps things on time and in budget.
I think with that same, and you said it, I think what Menlo's done a very good job at is the synergy of the individuals, not just the places on the bus, but the people that are in those places on the bus. And so the ability to have that synergy, and we're working on a real estate, or we're working on a practice sale, or we're working on a construction piece of this, to be able to collaborate, and Mark's desk is just 5 spaces from mine, to be able to have an understanding, because speed to market is incredibly important. The ability to get things done is incredibly important. And that's one of the things that we are suffering in so much right now is the grind of actually getting things done. So the ability to articulate and talk and understand the aspects of a project, and how we can help each other through our various skill sets, we're able to, once again, wrap ourselves around the client from many different angles and get to that speed to market quicker with the right resources and the right information and the best understanding of their overall task in front of us. And I think we've just done a very, very good job at that. It took a while to build, but everything we do just lends to that.
It's a team approach. It's a comprehensive approach, like Mark already explained, and it's a team full of a whole lot of experience. You know, if you're looking for assistance in the dental or medical space, starting up a practice, getting started in the real estate world, or exiting that world, we're here to help.